This game failed because it was a horrible game, full of absolute garbage 2025 social politics. Nobody wants to go play a video game and have a bunch of obnoxious TikTok weirdos shoved in their face. It's been a hot minute since we kind of talked about some of this in the gaming space, but I thought this was a beautiful end to this awful game. And as a matter of fact, I was the presenter recently at the Real Game Awards in conjunction with the Side Scrollers podcast and Stuttering Craig for the biggest bait and switch of 2024. And it was DragonAge the Veilguard. That was the winner of the biggest bait and switch, voted on by you, the actual gamers and players out there. Well, it just so happens that we've got some stories to go through here that I thought would be appropriate to follow up on. Bioware, which was the game studio that created this diversity, equity, and inclusion masterpiece. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about here, let me give you a little taste of what this game actually was.
Here, vegetables. Thank you. So, I'm non-binary.
Who the starts a conversation like that? I just sat down.
Yeah, that's DragonAge the Veilguard. It was actually in the game. Previously reported Bioware studio who made that trash, and there was a lot of like trans, non-binary, all kind of wacko, weirdo stuff represented in the game. It was very, very poorly made. The focus obviously was on DEI aspects, LGBTQ, all kind of weird shit, as opposed to actually making a really good game that was enjoyable gameplay. It just kind of wasn't there. The previously reported Bioware layoffs have gutted the once legendary RPG studio, leaving it with fewer than 100 employees. According to a new report from Bloomberg, this is from That Park Place. If you're not checking out That Park Place, make sure you do every day. This is a stunning decline from more than 200 developers who worked on DragonAge the Veilguard, and an even more dramatic fall from BioWare's peak when the company operated across 3 studios and employed well over 400 people. Electronic Arts' restructuring of BioWare was initially framed as a way to relocate talent to other projects, particularly as Mass Effect remains in early production, despite being announced 5 years ago. However, as more details emerge, it's clear that this wasn't just a shift in resources, it was the culmination of years of mismanagement and decline, leading to a near total collapse of BioWare as a development powerhouse. At its height, BioWare was one of the most respected RPG studios in the world, delivering genre-defining experiences with Mass Effect, Dragon Age, Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic, but under EA's leadership, very, very woke company, the studio has been in steady decline for the past decade. With each new project plagued by creative confusion, studio mismanagement, and increasing emphasis on live service monetization over storytelling. While EA's latest restructuring announcement tried to downplay the BioWare layoffs, the numbers speak for themselves. More than half the studio has been wiped out since work began on DragonAge the Veilguard, and the final blow came after the game's disastrous performance. EA had originally planned to loan developers to other teams while Mass Effect was still in early production, but once it became clear that DragonAge the Veilguard missed its sales targets by nearly 50%, those relocations became permanent, with over 20 staff members laid off outright. And today, we have got a bit of a follow-up here. The Electronic Arts CEO attempts to explain away DragonAge the Veilguard's failure, claims the game didn't sell due to a lack of live service elements, no mention of identity politics. Again, these are the types of CEOs and management at these major companies that is going to have to be gotten rid of. Unless they can come out and be honest about why games like this failed, nothing is going to get fixed. This game failed because it was a horrible game, full of absolute garbage 2025 social politics bullshit. That's all it was. Nobody wants to go play a video game and have a bunch of obnoxious TikTok weirdos shoved in their face. They play a video game like this to get the hell away from the TikTok freaks and weirdos. They don't want them in the game. Okay? That's why your game failed. It sucked, and people don't want to play characters like that. Okay? CEO's response was as out of touch as one might expect. Instead of acknowledging the real reasons the game failed, as in shoddy gameplay, a narrative that betrayed the franchise's roots. And yes, that's a very good point. This was the 10th iteration in the series. I remember playing DragonAge games, it must have been 15, 20 years ago, and an overbearing focus on identity politics. Wilson has instead blamed a lack of live service elements for the game's commercial flop, which is laughably stupid. He admitted recently that the Veilguard engaged, his word, engaged. I hate the word engagement because it's a mask. It's a catch-all. It's a big pile of crap. It's, engagements could be somebody hashtagged it on Twitter. Okay? It's kind of a crap word. Engaged around 1.5 million players, a number that fell short by nearly 50% of EA's expectations. However, Wilson never actually said that it sold 1.5 million copies, just that the game engaged that many players. A critical distinction that suggests EA is playing with its numbers and leaning on subscription services to soften the blow, which they probably are. Things like where you can sign up for a subscription service, play the game for a couple of days, and then dump it, right? They don't make near as much money that way. Especially if you're subscribing, they need you to stay subscribed. And a lot of people did that for Star Wars Outlaws. They engaged with it for a couple of days and then dumped their subscription. And some of those subscriptions they were giving away for like $10. It's stuff like that. So we don't know how bad it really is. Instead of confronting the real reasons for the Veilguard's failure, Wilson is shifting the blame to a supposed lack of shared world features and deeper engagement mechanics. Corporate speak for this game should have been a live service cash grab instead of a single-player RPG, which I'm old school. Give me the single-player RPG. Live service elements don't automatically make a success. In just the last year alone, two high-profile live service games that leaned heavily into identity politics, as did Veilguard, failed in spectacular fashion. Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, and Concord crashed and burned. And those two games nearly took down two major studios. Suicide Squad with Warner Brothers. Basically what bailed Warner Brothers out from that game was the massive success of Hogwarts Legacy, the Harry Potter game, which my son, Renegade Jr., is playing through a second time right now, matter of fact. He started that up a couple of weeks ago again. Loved that game. And there's some great new DLC supposed to be coming out pretty soon, so I'm looking forward to that. Concord was a $500 million disaster for Sony. It was one of the worst video games in history, probably one of the most expensive video games in history in total cost over its massively long-term development. What a disaster that was. Nothing but woke DEI bullshit in both these games. Both of them failed miserably, absolutely miserably. So in that regard, I guess he's hoping that Veilguard could have failed even more spectacularly had it been a live service game, I guess. It's no mystery why Veilguard flopped. It wasn't because it lacked live service, but because, as many pointed out, it was fundamentally broken, and it alienated the franchise's core audience. Fans were furious over low-quality gameplay, generic art direction, and writing that felt more like an ideological lecture than a compelling fantasy narrative. Under the leadership of Corinne Bush and John Elper, the Veilguard abandoned what made Dragon Age special in the first place. The deep, player-driven storytelling and morally complex characters that defied previous entries were replaced with shallow, preachy writing and a focus on gender ideology over actual world building.
Here, vegetables. Thank you. So, I'm non-binary.
Who the fuck starts a conversation like that? I just sat down.
actual gameplay footage. The backlash was immediate. Thousands of returns flooding retailers and GameStop slashing its price from $70 to $25 for this turd in less than 4 months. You know, here's the thing. When you completely gut a studio, you lay everybody off or you relocate them. Here's the thing. People like this, people running these companies, and this is where DEI is going to have a real problem we're going to have a real problem getting rid of it altogether. A lot of the people running these companies and put in charge of things like this are themselves DEI hires. They were brought in to be in the position they're in because of what they look like or who they screw or what genitals they think they have. I mean, a lot of these people that are in these positions making these kind of statements are there for the very reasons that we're complaining about these kind of games and these movies and these TV shows and all this other stuff. Unless you get rid of all these people at these game studios and entertainment companies and everywhere else, it's going to be harder to change it. Now, if they're really good at their job and they want to do a good job, then by all means stay behind. But if you're going to use your job, your position, to make really crappy products that nobody buys and that costs shareholders, because remember, EA, just like Disney and just like Netflix and just like Google and all these other big entertainment companies and tech companies, these are publicly owned. They're owned by people, you and me, right? We all have shares in these companies. If you've got an IRA or a 401k, you've got a large cap fund or a tech fund, most people do, you own shares of all these companies. When you're working against the shareholder, because as we've stated before, DEI, the cake is baked, kids. It doesn't work. This shit don't work. You can't go out there and spend $200-300 million making a AAA game that's going to focus on these type of social politics. Hard left Marxist social politics. It's going to fail. And I think any company knowingly doing this in 2025 is knowingly screwing over shareholders. You're screwing over the stock of your company. The people who own your stock, all your stockholders, they're the ones taking it on the chin. Disney. Y'all want to keep doubling down on this? See what happens. Keep losing money. Eventually, especially under this new Department of Justice with Donald Trump, let me tell you what. Maybe we'll see, maybe, I don't think tomorrow, but maybe sometime in the next 4 years, we could see Department of Justice or Securities and Exchange Commission under new leadership that is going to take a look at some of these companies and say, really start investigating and say, look, you're publicly traded. You are supposed to be acting in the best interest financially of the public and the shareholders specifically. Are you actually doing that? The data here says that this stuff doesn't work, but yet you're still doing it. Are you doing this out of ideology? Are you actually really informing your shareholders with full transparency all of the risks associated with doing this? And if, of course, the shareholders say, yeah, go ahead and do it, okay, that's one thing. But when you have peddled a bunch of lies to the public for years, like the $16 trillion of economic impact that we could have had added to our economy, but for the lack of DEI over the last several years. We showed that statistic earlier from when Yahoo Finance brought it up from the Citibank study that was published some time back. When you've conned the public for so long to tell them that, oh no, this will work, this is great, we need to have this, we'll make so much more money. It was all a lie. Every bit of it was a lie. It sounded real good on paper, right? Oh, just do this, invest a little here, hire a couple of people that look like this, and you'll get this whole giant new market. They'll just come running in. Didn't happen anywhere. The modern audience never seems to show up. It never seems to materialize in anywhere near the numbers that these companies need, be they Disney or Electronic Arts or Ubisoft or anybody else out there that does this stupid crap, Sony, Concord, whatever, they never seem to materialize in anywhere near the numbers that you need to justify what they spend to put this trash together. When you don't want to hire the best people for the job, you're more often than not going to wind up with the worst products. Congratulations to Electronic Arts and DragonAge the Veilguard. Congratulations to Sony and Concord. Congratulations to Disney and most of the trash they've made in the last 4 years. Yay, DEI. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.